The morning Joel Beckett disappeared, the Missouri air was thick with spring. March 19th, 2003. His wife, Lynn, remembered the faint smell of rain still clinging to his flannel shirt when she hugged him goodbye at 5:42 a.m. She'd always remember the exact time, because she glanced at the microwave clock when he kissed her forehead and said, "3 days, babe. I'll be back before you even notice I'm gone." Joel wasn't the kind of man people worried about. 44, a former Marine who didn't talk much, but meant every word he said. He liked black coffee, Hank Williams, and fixing things himself, especially his truck, an old white Freightliner he'd named Betsy, which he claimed had more personality than half the guys at his VFW lodge. He wasn't chasing some wild dream or running from anything. He was hauling a load of HVAC parts to Albuquerque, a route he'd run a dozen times, 3 days out, 3 days back, home in time for Lynn's 50th birthday dinner, just like they'd planned. The steaks were already in the freezer. He called the night before, like always. "Haley asleep?" "Yeah. You know how she gets when you're gone. Pretends she's fine, but checks the driveway every 10 minutes. She's 16, Lynn. She's still your girl." Joel chuckled. "Tell her I'll be back before she even misses me." It was the last thing she'd ever hear him say. The last confirmed sighting of Joel Beckett was at a Valero gas station in western Texas. Security footage time-stamped 10:37 a.m. March 19th shows him pulling in, stepping down from the cab in his worn jeans and scuffed boots, stretching his back like he always did after 4 hours on the road. He paid for gas and a microwaved breakfast burrito. He spoke briefly to a teenage cashier named Carla, asked if the coffee was fresh. She said it was. At 10:42 a.m., he called his dispatcher, a young woman named Cora Lane, barely 25, who'd only worked the job for 6 months. He sounded fine, she told police later, then paused. Actually, he sounded tired, like maybe something was bothering him. I didn't think much of it then. He said he'd grab lunch and be back on the road in 15. His route would take him through a dry, lonely stretch of Interstate 10, past Pecos, then south along New Mexico 285. Nothing unusual, but Joel Beckett never arrived in Albuquerque. By 6 p.m., when he failed to check in as scheduled, Cora tried his cell. No answer. No voicemail. That wasn't like him. She logged it, flagged it to her supervisor. By 9 o'clock, Lynn had called 3 times. "He always calls me when he stops for the night," she said. Always. By midnight, panic had started to bloom. The first time something felt wrong, really wrong, was when Haley sat on the porch swing at 2:15 a.m., phone clutched in her hand, waiting for her dad to call. Every time headlights rolled down their street, she froze, then exhaled when it wasn't him. Maybe he just stopped somewhere with bad service, Lynn offered, her voice already trembling. Maybe the truck broke down. But Joel knew that route like the lines on his hands. He'd once changed a timing belt in a sandstorm near Roswell. He knew how to reach someone. By dawn, the phone still hadn't rung. Lynn called the company again, then the police. "Ma'am, how long has he been out of contact?" 18 hours. That's not uncommon for long-haul drivers. He could have stopped for rest, lost signal. "No," Lynn said, "you don't understand. Joel Beckett doesn't disappear." On March 21st, 2 full days after his last contact, authorities launched a formal search. Joel's truck had GPS tracking, or it should have. But the last ping was at 11:13 a.m. on the 19th, just a few miles outside a dusty town called Sierra Blanca. Then, nothing. The truck vanished. No credit card activity, No calls, no toll records, no accidents reported, no witnesses. The cab radio, which Joel always kept on Channel 19, went silent. It was like he'd driven straight off the map. Lynn and Haley drove 12 hours south to Sierra Blanca. The town was barely a town. A few trailers, a boarded-up diner, one rusty gas station, a place where the wind carried sand and secrets. They walked the area themselves, asked questions, showed photos. No one had seen him. One man thought he might have seen a truck like that, but couldn't say when or if. Maybe he just wanted out, one trooper said later. You'd be surprised how often men do. Disappear. Start over. Lynn nearly slapped him. He had a daughter, a mortgage, a goddamn dentist appointment next week. Joel didn't run. A week passed, then 2. Flyers went up in truck stops, diners, Walmarts. Lynn did an interview with the local news, voice tight, jaw locked. She refused to cry. He didn't just vanish, she said. Someone knows something. But nothing came. On March 26th, Joel was officially declared missing. The file was opened. Investigators combed through his finances. No red flags. No secret accounts. No suspicious contacts. Just a man, a truck, and a silence too loud to bear. At home, Haley barely spoke. She stopped going to school for 2 weeks, slept with her dad's denim jacket on her bed. She'd sniff the collar sometimes, like it might tell her something. Like the scent of his skin could explain why the world had cracked open. Lynn tried to stay composed. She made phone calls, kept lists, recorded every name she spoke to. She wasn't going to let this go cold. Not her Joel. But time didn't care. Time moved forward, even when you begged it to stop. And then, nothing. Until 10 years later. A maintenance worker at a roadside motel in rural Utah, nearly 1,000 miles from Sierra Blanca, noticed a strange vehicle parked just off the property line, partially obscured by scrub brush and a collapsed shed. White Freightliner. No plates. Sun-bleached. Rusted rims. Cracked windshield. Inside, nothing. No body. No blood. No keys. Just a layer of desert dust. And a faded Polaroid taped to the glove box. A picture of Joel Beckett, in uniform, smiling, just wondering, where are you watching from? Write it down. Bellow. The motel manager's voice trembled when she called 911. There's a truck behind our old storage shed. No one's used that building in years. I thought it was abandoned. Deputies arrived within the hour. The Freightliner was buried under a decade of weather. Desert winds had eroded its paint, stripped it down to a chalky white ghost of itself. But the frame was unmistakable. VN confirmed. Joel Beckett's truck. No one could explain how it got there. No cameras covered that side of the lot. The motel had changed ownership twice since 2003. Employees came and went, and no one remembered it arriving. The cab was locked, the tires flat. Inside, they found no signs of struggle, no blood, no torn fabric, no fingerprints, even. Not one clear print on the steering wheel or door handles. But the Polaroid, that was new. Joel, in his marine blues, smiling under a flagpole, his handwriting on the back, faint from age but legible. October 1991, Quantico. That photo hadn't been in the truck when he left Missouri. Lynn would have sworn it on her life. News of the truck's discovery hit local stations like a lightning bolt. For most people, Joel Beckett's name had long since faded into the graveyard of unsolved disappearances. But in Birch Creek, Missouri, it never had. When Lynn got the call, she was sitting at her kitchen table, folding Haley's son's laundry. Her hands stopped mid-fold. Her breath caught. We found his truck. She didn't speak for a full 5 seconds. Then, calmly, "Is he—" "No one inside, but we're opening an investigation." Flying out to Utah felt like re-entering a dream she'd worked hard to forget. The dry heat, the haze over the roads, the low rumble of cicadas, it all felt too familiar, too close to the last time she'd stood under a sun like this, begging a sheriff to take her seriously. Haley insisted on coming. 26 now, with sharp eyes and her father's stubborn jawline. She didn't speak during the car ride to the site, just stared out the window, arms crossed. "I don't get it," she finally said. "How does a truck go missing for 10 years? How does nobody see it?" No one had answers. The scene was sealed off with yellow tape, but Joel's truck looked small, smaller than Haley remembered. The chrome was eaten by rust. The decals had peeled. It wasn't Betsy anymore. It was a hollow thing, a husk. Haley leaned in close to the glass. He kept mints in the dash. Little Altoids tin. Always said bad breath was a tactical disadvantage. She didn't see it. No mints, no paperwork, no logbook, no CB mic. The interior was clean. Too clean. Someone had wiped it down. Detective Raymond Ellison was leading the new case. A tall man with a desert tan and creased eyes, he looked like he'd seen too many dead ends. He walked Lynn and Haley through what they knew, which wasn't much. The GPS unit had been removed. The wiring was intact, but the device itself was gone. "No signs of forced entry," he said. "No signs of rodent nesting either. That's rare for something abandoned this long. Makes me think it hasn't been here the whole time." Haley blinked. "So what? Someone parked it here? Recently?" "We're not ruling anything out." Lynn's voice cracked. "Have you checked for DNA?" "Nothing usable yet. We'll know more in a few days." "But the photo—" "We're analyzing it." The next few days passed in a surreal fog. Reporters showed up. Old friends called. A few conspiracy theorists even emailed Lynn, offering wild theories. Government abduction, alien involvement, cartel hits. She deleted them all. Haley stayed quiet, watching the investigators like a hawk. "None of this makes sense," she told her mother one night. "Why leave the truck here? Why not burn it? Dump it?" Lynn answered without turning her head. "Because whoever did this wanted us to find it." The silence that followed was heavier than anything spoken. Back in 2003, the first week of Joel's disappearance had been a mess of confusion and false hope. The authorities in Texas had been quick to say he was probably just gone. Long-haul drivers sometimes left their lives, started over, changed their names. That narrative clung to the case like grease. But Lynn never believed it. Joel wouldn't leave Haley. He wouldn't leave her. And he sure as hell wouldn't leave Betsy. The initial search had focused on the stretch of desert near Sierra Blanca. Volunteers combed the area on foot, using dogs, ATVs, helicopters. Nothing. No tire tracks. No discarded items. No signs he'd ever veered off the road. By day 3, they'd officially classified it as a voluntary absence. Lynn remembered the phrase like a slap, but one person hadn't been so sure back then. Cora Lane, the young dispatcher, had called Lynn on the 4th day. Quietly. Privately. "I didn't say this to the police," she'd whispered. But during that last call, Joel said something weird. After he hung up, I replayed it in my head a dozen times. "What was it?" He paused, like mid-sentence, then said, "If something happens, tell Haley I'm proud of her." Lynn had frozen. He said that? I didn't think it meant anything. Maybe it didn't. But now, standing beside his truck in the Utah desert, those words echoed back like a bullet. Detective Ellison followed up on an odd detail. The location. The motel was remote, yes, but not that remote. And more importantly, there was no record of that area being searched in 2003. No reason to suspect it back then. It was hundreds of miles off Joel's route. So how did the truck get there? Had it been moved recently? And if so, by who? They ran surveillance records. Nothing. They questioned nearby businesses. No sightings. It was as if the Freightliner had materialized out of thin air. But Joel's photo, that changed everything. Because when the lab returned the report, it revealed something chilling. The photo hadn't been aged. It was stored in a dark, dry environment. Minimal exposure, preserved, like someone had been keeping it, keeping him. That night, Lynn dreamt she was sitting in the passenger seat of Joel's truck, staring out at the open highway. The radio was playing low. Joel was driving, but he never turned his head. Just said, "I tried to come home." She woke up drenched in sweat. Outside, a warm desert wind rustled the motel curtains. And under her door, someone had slipped a folded napkin. Handwritten, shaky, like from an old typewriter ribbon. He didn't leave. He was taken. No name. No return address. Just those 7 words. For a brief moment, finding the truck felt like momentum. Like something was finally shifting after years of dead air and silence. But 3 weeks later, the trail was already starting to dry up again. Just like before. The napkin message? He didn't leave. He was taken. Hadn't led anywhere. No fingerprints, no surveillance footage, no witnesses, just a whisper left in the dark. Detective Ellison had the note tested, of course, and the handwriting analyzed. The ink was from a typewriter ribbon, likely from a portable Smith Corona, the kind popular in the 70s and still used by some enthusiasts. But that led nowhere to. No envelope, no prints, no trace. It was like the message came from a ghost. Back in Missouri, Lynn returned home with more questions than answers. She walked into their house like someone entering a museum. Everything exactly as it had been, and yet nothing felt alive. Joel's toolbox in the garage was still lined up perfectly, each wrench and socket in its place. His thermos, dented steel gray, sat on a shelf above the washer, just where he'd left it. Haley found her father's old cassette tapes in a drawer. She played one late at night. Merle Haggard crackling through an old boombox. It made her cry. A week after returning, Lynn received the first letter. It arrived without a return address, postmarked from Billings, Montana. One line, printed in blocky, uneven handwriting on thick, yellowed paper. It wasn't his choice. There was no salutation, no explanation, no signature, just the sentence. It hit Lynn like a punch to the chest. She carried it into the kitchen and laid it flat on the table, smoothing it with both hands, as if she could press more meaning from the paper. She didn't show it to Haley right away. Not yet. The letter wasn't the first time she'd received something strange. Starting in 2005, 2 years after Joel vanished, a pattern had started. One envelope, once a year, always in March. Sometimes postmarked from small towns, other times from major cities. Denver, Topeka, Boise. The messages were always short. One sentence, 2006. He didn't drive there. 2007. Not who you think. 2009. You stopped too soon. And now, after the truck resurfaced, they had started again. The same type of paper. The same crooked printing. Always anonymous. She had shown the first few to the local police years ago. They opened a file. But without threats or a known sender, they couldn't do much. Could be a hoax, one officer had told her. Somebody getting their kicks. But she never believed that. Not deep down. Haley didn't know about the letters until she found the stack one summer during college. They were in a file marked Taxes in the bottom of a locked filing cabinet. She didn't confront Lynn right away, just stared at them, read each one 5 or 6 times. Finally, she asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" Lynn looked tired. "Because I didn't want you chasing ghosts." Haley's reply was sharp. "What if they're not ghosts?" By 2008, the case had been unofficially closed. There were no new leads, no suspects, and no physical evidence beyond the truck and the now dead GPS signal. Ellison, who hadn't been involved back then, requested the original case files from Texas. What he found disturbed him. One photo from a gas station camera, Joel at the counter, hadn't been logged into the main evidence file. It showed Joel glancing over his shoulder toward the station's glass doors, lips slightly parted, eyes tense, like he saw something. Or someone. The timestamp matched his final call to dispatch almost exactly. And behind him, barely visible in the reflection, a white SUV, parked crooked near Pump 4. The license plate was unreadable. The figure in the driver's seat, too blurry to identify. But it raised new questions. Why had no one followed up on that vehicle? Why wasn't it listed in the incident report? When Ellison called the retired deputy who had handled the scene back then, the man sighed heavily. "I remember that picture. Figured he was just tired. Hell, I was tired too." "You didn't think the vehicle behind him was worth noting?" "Didn't go anywhere. Could have been anyone." Ellison hung up without responding. Haley, in the meantime, had started her own timeline. She wasn't waiting anymore. She created a wall in her apartment. String, pins, maps, post-its, copies of every letter. She tracked locations, dates, cross-referenced them with missing persons reports, crime data, weather patterns. Lynn thought it was obsessive, but Haley saw it as the only thing that made sense. "He didn't just disappear," she said again and again. "Someone made him disappear." But why? Back in Utah, a ranger 2 towns over reported something odd to Ellison. He remembered, vaguely, an incident around 2010. A man in an old, dirty Freightliner had been spotted sleeping off-road near a canyon trailhead. The truck didn't match any local registration. A hiker reported it, concerned. By the time anyone went to check, the truck was gone. At the time, it seemed trivial. The ranger didn't file a full report, just a logbook note. But now, with the discovery of Joel's vehicle so close, it felt eerie. Ellison made a copy of the log and forwarded it to Lynn and Haley. The date? March 19th, 2010, 7 years to the day after Joel vanished. At 3:43 a.m. that same night, Lynn woke up from a dead sleep, the sound of tires on gravel. Software slow. She slipped quietly to the window. Nothing. But the mailbox flag was down. She'd left it up. She stepped outside, barefoot, heart racing. Inside the box, another letter. Plain white envelope. No stamp, no markings. One line, as always. Montana isn't the end. If this story touched you, even a little, let me know in the comments. I read them all. It was a Wednesday morning in early April 2013 when the call came in. A forest ranger named Elias Thorne radioed the Idaho County Sheriff's Office to report an abandoned vehicle off the service road near Cottonwood Creek, 80 miles from the nearest paved highway, nestled deep within the Clearwater National Forest. "It's big," he said, "like a semi. Looks like it's been sitting a while, but not that long." Sheriff's deputies took nearly 2 hours to reach the site, bouncing down narrow logging trails choked by brush and half-collapsed pines. When they emerged into the clearing, there it was, a white Freightliner, half-covered in green moss, pine needles thick on the windshield, cracked side mirror dangling by a wire. but the body was intact. Tires mostly inflated. The plate was still there. Missouri registration. Joel Beckett. The official police body cam footage from that day never made it to the public, but Haley would watch it later, again and again. The camera bobs slightly as the officer approaches, boots crunching against damp leaves. The truck sits eerily still, like an animal long dead but never disturbed. The door is closed, the driver's window slightly open, mildew curling up the vinyl. "Looks like someone tried to keep it out of sight," the officer mutters to the camera. "Why drag a rig all the way out here?" They pry the door open. A gust of cold, stagnant air spills out. And inside, the past. On the dashboard sat a cassette tape. No label. Inserted halfway into the stereo. The eject button jammed. The ashtray held a half-burned cigarette, filter barely touched, the tobacco gone dry and orange. A folded flannel shirt lay on the passenger seat. Dust had settled into the fibers, but not enough to be 10 years' worth. There was a jerry can in the back, still half full of diesel. A duffel bag beneath the seat contained 3 shirts, a shaving kit, and a small, worn-out teddy bear. Lynn's breath caught when she saw it in the photos. It was the one Haley had given Joel when she was 6. A dumb little gas station bear with a red ribbon around its neck. She'd snuck it into his truck before one of his runs, wrote, "Come home safe," in Sharpie on the ribbon. It was still there. The ink had faded, but the words were visible. When police played the cassette, the tape whined at first, then cracked into sound, static, then faint music, Patsy Cline, Sweet Dreams. Then a pause, a man's voice, Joel's voice. "I don't know. Feels like the map don't match the road anymore." Another pause. You could hear the engine humming faintly in the background, and what might have been birds outside the cab. Then, more clearly, "If anything happens, just tell Haley it wasn't about her. Tell her that. Tell her she's the best thing I ever did." Then, click. Silence. The tape ended there. Lynn collapsed when they showed her the footage. Not dramatic, not like in movies, just folded, quietly, as if her bones forgot how to hold her together. Haley screamed, a sharp, piercing sound that seemed to come from her throat and her gut at once. "He was there!" she cried. "He was here! All this time!" She dropped to her knees beside the laptop screen, her hands shaking. "What the hell is this? What is this?" No one had an answer. The discovery rewrote everything. The truck could not have been sitting in that forest for 10 years. Rangers patrolled the area every season. Trails were used by hikers, even if sparsely. A vehicle that size, even camouflaged, would have been noticed long before now. It had to have been moved. Recently. But how? There were no clear tracks. Recent rain had churned the earth, washed away any trail. No surveillance, no gate logs. The area was unmanaged land, with no cameras, no consistent traffic. Like someone had known exactly how to hide it, or when to bring it back. More unsettling, there were 2 sets of footprints in the damp forest floor. One set heavy, with deep impressions. Work boots, likely a man. The other, smaller. Could have been female. Could have been a teenager. The prints diverged near the edge of the clearing, vanishing into thick brush. They led nowhere. The forensic team documented everything, swabbed the interior, dusted for prints, collected the tape, the teddy bear, the cigarette stub. They found a fingerprint on the inside of the glove compartment. It wasn't Joel's. The system returned no match. And then, the window. One officer, late to the sweep, leaned in to recheck the cab. It was twilight, and the condensation from his breath fogged the glass briefly. That's when he saw it. A smudged handprint on the inside of the rear window. Smaller, greasy, recent. Not there in the morning photos. Someone's been back since we arrived, he said. They swept the area again. Brought dogs. Nothing. Whoever left the mark was gone. Slipped back into the trees. Or had never left. Lynn and Haley flew to Idaho within 24 hours. They stood beside the Freightliner as the sun dipped behind the pines, casting long, thin shadows across the clearing. Haley ran her fingers along the truck's side, brushing off moss, revealing chipped white paint beneath. She touched the door handle, closed her eyes. "I used to ride shotgun on Saturdays," she whispered. "Just me and him. Truck stop nachos and bad country radio." Lynn stood behind her, arms crossed tight against her chest. "This isn't just a truck anymore," she said. "It's a message." "A message from who?" Haley snapped. Lynn's jaw clenched. "I don't know." That night, in the motel off Route 95, Lynn sat on the edge of her bed, holding the bear in her lap. Haley sat cross-legged on the floor, staring at the cassette. She reached for her phone, pulled up a voice memo app and hit record. "I think he knew," she said. "Back then, I think he knew something was coming." "And no one listened." She paused. "Maybe we still aren't." At 2:11 a.m., the motel manager called police. Security camera at the edge of the property. Motion triggered. A figure, partially obscured, seen near the parked Freightliner. Standing still for nearly 2 minutes, then walking away. Into the dark. The morning after the motel security footage came in, Detective Raymond Ellison was already at the sheriff's office reviewing the grainy black-and-white clip. The figure stood motionless, half-shrouded by pine shadows. No visible face, no defining features. Hands in pockets. One leg slightly turned in, as if injured or awkward. The timestamp read 2:11:43 a.m. The figure stared at the Freightliner for 112 seconds, then turned, slowly, and disappeared behind the tree line. "They knew it was here," Ellison said aloud, not to anyone in particular. "And they came back." The reappearance of Joel's truck cracked open the case again. Officially, this time. Lynn didn't wait for the bureaucracy to catch up. She used part of her retirement savings and hired a private investigator. Randy Tibbetts, a name whispered in certain circles as the guy you called when cold cases went colder than the grave. Randy was in his early 60s, ex-FBI. Square shoulders, weathered face, deep voice that sounded like gravel and bourbon. He rarely smiled, not because he was unfriendly, but because he'd lost the muscle memory. He'd once worked abduction cases overseas, then domestic trafficking, then he just burned out, walked away. Now he specialized in the ones everyone else had stopped caring about. When he met Lynn and Haley in Idaho, he only said one thing before taking the file. "I don't like mysteries." Tibbetts started with the letters. He asked for everything Lynn had kept. Every envelope, every slip of paper, every timestamp and postmark. He organized them chronologically, mapping them by sender location. The pattern was strange. The letters were always mailed from a different city, sometimes hundreds of miles apart, sometimes just towns away from the last. Billings, Montana, Great Falls, Bozeman, Missoula, Kalispell, always Montana, always in March. Randy pulled a favor from a friend still working at USPS, had them trace any matching handwriting or formatting from those years. What came back startled him. Each letter had been mailed by a different sender, different post offices, different clerks. No repeat handwriting on envelopes. But, and here was the twist, the paper inside each one appeared to be identical stock. Same thickness, same manufacturer, same light ivory tone with tiny blue fibers woven in. Whoever sent them had access to controlled, consistent materials. That ruled out a lone hoaxer with a Sharpie and a grudge. This was organized. Meanwhile, Ellison's team got results back from the Freightliner's interior. The GPS tracker had been physically removed, not cut, not smashed, but carefully unplugged from its panel beneath the dashboard. It had been pried out using a small flat tool, leaving no damage. Whoever did this, the tech said, knew exactly where to look. The dashboard's memory was wiped. Recent models logged system diagnostics, but this older truck required manual retrieval. Still, they found one odd entry. A diagnostic reset logged in late 2012. But no records showed Joel, or anyone in his family, ever having accessed or serviced the truck after 2003. Then came the cassette tapes. During a secondary sweep of the surrounding forest near the logging road, officers stumbled on a rusted ammo box half buried under leaves behind a fallen cedar. Inside, 3 cassettes, wrapped in a plastic grocery bag, yellow with age but sealed tight. 2 were music, old country compilations, bootlegged mixes labeled in faded marker, Cabin Jams 1, and Truck Stop Gold. But the third had no label. They played it in the evidence room late one night. A man's voice, not Joel. "You said he wouldn't ask questions." Another voice, rougher, older. "He wasn't supposed to." A long pause. Background noise. Wind, distant highway hum. Then the sound of something heavy shifting. The first man again, whispering now. He saw the map. He figured it out. Then, a sharp click. Tape ends. The room fell silent. Haley was the first to notice the bite marks. Tibbetts had asked to see the tapes. He flipped them over in his hands, inspecting the reels, the casing. On the edge of the unlabeled cassette, faint but undeniable, were small impressions. Rough, deep, bite marks. Not from chewing idly like nervous habits. These were sharper, harder, as if someone had clamped the tape in their teeth, hands occupied or tied, as if trying to hide it, or crush it. A panic moment, or fear. Randy met Lynn for coffee in a small cafe off Main Street in Cottonwood. It was the first time he looked truly unsettled. "I've seen things like this before," he said. "Like Joel?" she asked. "Like the pattern." He reached into his satchel, pulled out a thin case file. 2001. A driver named Marcus Linfield disappeared near Kansas. Found his rig 6 weeks later in Nebraska. Cassette in the cab. Message erased. 2005. Evan Dreyer, Colorado route, disappeared. Same model Freightliner. Left a letter in his glove box, his handwriting, but strange phrasing. Family said it wasn't his voice. 2008. Gary Nolan, Oregon, found dead in his sleeper cab. No visible wounds. Cassette found in his shirt pocket. Lynn was silent. These weren't treated as connected back then. Different states, different departments. But I looked into it. Each guy had a daughter. Each drove solo. Each went missing in March. She stared at him, her knuckles white around her coffee mug. "You think this is a serial?" "I don't know what to call it. But this isn't isolated." Ellison's team combed through archived surveillance footage from nearby towns. Nothing from the exact night. But a week after the truck was discovered, a motion sensor camera on the North Trailhead captured something. A figure, tall, moving with a limp, walking toward the edge of the forest at 3:14 a.m., then stopping, looking directly at the camera. The face was partially obscured by a hood, but the posture, the outline, and one detail stood out. They were carrying a small, rectangular object. Compact, like a cassette tape. The next morning, just before dawn, A local deputy doing a routine patrol saw something strange near the edge of the clearing. A pile of small stones, neatly stacked. 6 flat rocks, a 7th placed crooked on top. Underneath, another envelope. Inside, one sentence. "You still think this is about him?" No address, no signature. Only that. It was late May when Randy Tibbetts made the drive to Sterling, Colorado. A quiet grid of streets, wide skies, and farmland stitched with grain elevators and irrigation lines. It looked like nothing ever happened there. But something had. In 2005, Evan Dreyer left from this town hauling a trailer of prefabricated siding panels bound for Billings, Montana. He never arrived. His rig was found 2 months later, parked deep in the Bighorn National Forest, keys still in the ignition. The trailer was gone. And in the glove compartment, a note, handwritten, short. She doesn't need to know everything. Evan's widow still lived in the same house. Lisa Dreyer. She opened the door cautiously, recognized the look in Randy's eyes before he said a word. "You're here about Evan," she said quietly. "Yes, ma'am. I believe your husband's case might be connected to another." She let him in. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and old cedar. In the living room were photos of Evan in uniform, Evan with their son, Evan holding a newborn girl with wide blue eyes. "She was 4 when he vanished," Lisa said, pointing at the photo. "She's in college now, studying criminal justice." There was a pause. "I never believed the official story," she added. "They said he probably walked off. Maybe a breakdown. But Evan wasn't a runner. He was a fixer. He'd turn around on the highway if he thought he hit a squirrel." Randy asked if she still had the note. She did. He studied it. Clean penmanship, straight lines, Evan's handwriting. But something was off. The spacing, the slant. It felt forced, like someone trying to mimic the voice of a man they'd only met once. Lisa nodded toward the box where she kept the letter. There was something else, too. Evan kept tapes. He'd record thoughts, messages. He called them cab confessions. "We only found one. The rest were gone." She handed Randy the tape. On the front, written in fading blue marker, March, WYO. Randy played it in his rental car outside the Dreyer house. At first, just road noise. Then Evan's voice, clearer than expected. "You ever get that feeling like something's riding shotgun, even when you're alone? Like you can feel the weight shift when you turn?" A pause. Then, "I picked up this kid near Rawlins. Said his car broke down. Just a duffel bag and a hoodie. Quiet, but polite. We talked a bit, mostly about music. Then he asked if I'd ever heard of signal blackouts. Like places where GPS and radio just vanish." Randy felt his chest tighten. Didn't think much of it at the time, but after Cheyenne he got weird. Said I missed a turn, that I was being followed. When I laughed, he didn't. The tape crackled, then silence. End of recording. No name, no follow-up, just dread. Back in Idaho, Ellison ran the new tape against the one found in Joel's rig. The background audio, ambient road hum, mechanical clicks, even the faint rhythm of the turn signal, had an uncanny similarity. Same Freightliner model, same acoustic signature. Same voice? No, different men. But the same tension, the same tone that said, "I shouldn't be saying this." Haley, listening to both recordings, turned pale. "They knew something," she whispered. "They just didn't know how deep it went." Randy flew next to Oregon to meet the sister of Gary Nolan, the 2008 case. Gary's death had been ruled undetermined. His body was found in his sleeper cab, parked under a highway overpass outside Eugene. No trauma, no drugs, No alcohol, no explanation. He was 39, a solo driver. His sister, Marianne, was blunt. They said heart attack. But I've seen corpses before. He looked peaceful, but wrong, too cold, like he'd been dead longer than they claimed. She showed Randy the only item recovered from Gary's body, a cassette tape in his shirt pocket. Not labeled. Nothing but static. But when Randy held it to the light, he saw faint scratches on the plastic, a symbol maybe, etched with a nail or blade, a triangle with a vertical line through the center. He snapped a photo. Later, over dinner, he laid the 3 cases side by side. 3 solo truckers, 3 tapes, 3 vanishing points, spread across the Mountain West, but triangulating loosely around Montana. And all 3 had daughters. All 3 went missing, or were found. In March. Randy pulled up Joel's file again. March 19th, 2003. He stared at the date, then at the envelope he kept from the Idaho site. The one with the message, "You still think this is about him." That sentence echoed in his head like a riddle. What if the target wasn't Joel? What if it had never been just about the men? The breakthrough came by accident. Haley, still obsessively cataloging every detail, cross-referenced Joel's fuel logs from 2003 with weather data and trucker forum posts. She found a post from a driver named Ray Big Cat Lunsford on a now-defunct message board archive. He wrote, "Weird day March 2003. Met Beckett south of Pecos. Said he picked up a hitcher, young guy, dark hoodie. Didn't like his vibe. Said he talked like a preacher, but stared like a cop." Ray had died in 2011, but Haley found an old email linked to the username. It still worked. She wrote to his son. The son remembered the story. "My dad said that Beckett looked jumpy. Told him the kid was quiet, but kept asking about his route, about detours. Said he looked too clean to be broke." Joel had never picked up hitchhikers before. Not once. But something made him stop that day. Randy looped Ellison in. The detail about the young guy in a dark hoodie now showed up in 2 cases. Joel, Evan. He searched for traffic cam footage from 2003. Nothing survived. But in 2005, in Evan Dryer's case, an old VHS camera at a gas station near Casper, Wyoming had a short, blurry clip. It showed Evan fueling up. A figure approached from the edge of the frame. Tall, thin, hoodie up, face obscured. Evan turns. They talk. Then both walk toward the truck. Together. Later that night, Randy sat with Lynn and Haley, laying out his findings. "This isn't about random disappearances," he said. "It's a pattern. And someone, or something, is orchestrating it." "But why?" Lynn asked. "Why drivers like Joel?" "I don't know. But it's not just them. I think—" He hesitated. "I think the letters, the way they talk, they're about you. About Haley." The room went still. "What do you mean?" Haley asked. Randy opened his notebook. He flipped to the last letter, the one found under the stones. "You still think this is about him?" He circled the word "you," then underlined it. That same week, a new name appeared in the National Missing Persons Database. Case ID number MP743921. Name, Daniel Reese. Age, 41. Occupation, long-haul truck driver. Last seen, March 17, 2013. Last contact, phone call to wife from a gas station outside Great Falls, Montana. Details, solo route. Has daughter, age 10. Truck, never found. 2 days later, Daniel's wife received a letter in the mail. No return address. One sentence, he picked up the wrong passenger. The Reese case shook something loose in Randy Tibbetts. Another driver, same conditions, same timeline, same vanishing act, but the letter to the wife. He picked up the wrong passenger. That one felt closer, like someone wasn't warning them anymore, but taunting them. Randy reopened his map. It was already littered with pins, red for disappearances, black for found trucks, blue for letter postmarks. But now, something was different. When he traced a line between the core cases, Beckett, Dreyer, Nolan, and Reese, they fell along a strange, narrow axis, a fractured spine that ran between Pecos, Texas, and Flathead County, Montana. Crossing a handful of remote towns, dead zones, abandoned industrial routes. The kind of places you'd forget existed, until someone forgot to come home. At the midpoint of that line was a small blip. Garnet Ridge, Wyoming. An old mining area, mostly reclaimed by wilderness, marked by faded USGS maps, and a handful of dead-end forest roads. And it was there, in the footnotes of a 2004 case file, that Randy found a name. Terrence Terry James. Survived. Terry James had been arrested for petty theft in 2006. Before that, he'd driven for a third-rate freight outfit running midnight routes between Phoenix and Cheyenne. His file didn't mention much, except for one psychological evaluation written in red ink. Subject experienced acute dissociative episode following unexplained absence in 2004. Claims abduction. No injuries. Highly distressed. No one believed him. Randy did. He found Terry in a halfway house outside of Laramie. The man was 52, looked 70. Weathered, pale, eyes sunken. A nicotine stain between his fingers as he clutched a styrofoam coffee cup like it was the last thing tethering him to the earth. "I remember you types," Terry said, not unkindly. "Feds came back in 2006, asked the same questions. Never really listened, though. I'm not with them anymore." Terry looked at him carefully, then nodded toward a plastic chair across the table. "I'll tell you, but you won't like it." He had been driving a 1995 Peterbilt on Route 287 near Muddy Gap. It was March. Cold. Empty roads. Around 2:30 a.m., headlights appeared behind him, bright, high, closing fast. "I thought it was just a tailgater," he said. "But then the lights went off, pitch black. I pull over. Nothing passes. I wait. Then my CB crackles, but not with voices. With my own." Randy frowned. "Your own?" Terry leaned in. "I heard myself, saying things I didn't say. Stuff from earlier that day. Orders. A call with my dispatcher. Even a joke I told someone at a diner. All of it. Played back. Out of order. Like someone stitched my voice together." He looked toward the window. Didn't blink. "Then I woke up somewhere underground." He said it was a basement. Dirt floor. No light except a single bulb that flickered every few minutes. Water dripped. Pipes creaked. The smell of rust and diesel hung in the air. He wasn't restrained, but the door was bolted from the outside. "For 3 days I sat there," Terry said. "Didn't sleep, barely breathed, and every few hours I heard it. My own voice. From the other side of the wall. Saying things I never remembered saying." He paused. Then it started calling my name. I thought I was losing it. I started yelling back, screaming, banging on the door. I swore I'd heard footsteps above me. Then silence. Then a different voice. Not mine. Just breathing. Heavy. Close. "What happened then?" Randy asked. "Door opened on the 3rd day. I ran. No one chased me. No vehicle. No sign anyone had ever been there." He drew a shaky breath. "Went back a week later with a friend. There was nothing. Just trees. And that place, gone. Not a foundation. Not a nail. Randy pushed a notepad toward him. Can you mark where it was? Terry hesitated, then made a small X just west of a dirt service road leading into the Bitterroot Range, the same coordinate range where Joel Beckett's truck had been discovered. Did you see anyone? A face? Randy asked. Terry looked haunted. There was a man. Just a glimpse. First night. Stood near the stairs, watching. Had a tattoo. What kind? Terry rolled up his sleeve and scratched a rough sketch on the paper. An eye with 3 lashes, inside a broken circle. Left wrist. Randy froze. Because 3 weeks later, Haley saw it. It was late June, and Haley had stopped at a roadside cafe outside of Kamaya, Idaho. A nothing town on the map, just a blur on the way to another dead end. She ordered black coffee, didn't plan to speak to anyone. Then she saw him. Barista. Young, mid-20s, short sleeves, wrist exposed as he slid a tray onto the counter. Tattoo, exactly as Terry had drawn it. Haley's stomach turned cold. She didn't say anything, just stared. Snapped a photo under the table. But when she looked up again, he was gone. That night, she locked herself in her room, scanned through every photo she had taken that month, every name in Randy's files, every article, every letter, and finally opened Google Maps. She started zooming in across the Wyoming-Montana borderlands, slow, methodical, terrain view, elevation layers, dirt trails. Then, something strange. A blocked access road, labeled only as USFS-19J, marked as impassable. But on satellite, barely visible, was a rectangular shape, long, faintly metallic in tone. Could have been a storage container, a shelter, a compound. Her mouse hovered over it. Then she hit Save Location. Across the house, Randy's phone lit up with a message from Haley. I think I found where they kept him. And as he leaned forward to open the image, the power in the house flickered. Then, died. Haley didn't tell Randy. She didn't tell her mother. She just left. No note, no explanation, just the saved pin on Google Maps and a full tank of gas. It wasn't some reckless decision. She'd sat with it, stared at that faint metallic shape in the satellite image for days, zooming in and out until the pixels blurred. No name, no label, just an interruption in the trees. Too clean, too rectangular, like it wasn't supposed to be seen. She packed light, old jeans, hiking boots, headlamp, water, backup phone, and her dad's flannel. The one that still smelled like oil and cedar and faintly of the aftershave he'd used the winter he disappeared. Haley whispered to herself before starting the engine. This is where it ends. She began the drive before sunrise, following the logging roads northeast through Montana's Bitterroot Range. Past Flathead, past any cell reception, her GPS died around mile marker 174. After that, it was just instinct, and the grainy satellite printout she kept folded in her glove box. The forest swallowed the road quickly. Pines leaned overhead like listening giants. Gravel turned to dirt, then to roots, then to nothing. She ditched the car when branches started to scrape the doors, and walked. It took her 2 hours to find it. A rusted fire road. Barely a path, really. More like a forgotten scar across the hill. But it led somewhere. The light shifted as she climbed. Trees thinned. Wind picked up. Birds vanished. And then, just beyond a ridge, she saw it. A collapsed shed, choked in ivy. One side caved in, the roof folded like a crushed box. Burn marks blackened the eastern wall. Metal hinges twisted like vines. But the structure was still there, and it wasn't a shed. It was a holding pen. Inside, scorched cement floor. Chains bolted to the ground. A rusted wood stove in the corner, long cold. Faint markings on the walls, Scratches, numbers, tally marks, some illegible, others fresh. She stepped carefully, every bootfall echoing with dust. The smell was heavy, Moldavian ash, something sweet rotting beneath it all. In the back corner, she found a box, metal, military style, hinged and locked, but time had corroded the latch. She popped it open with a rock. Inside, letters, dozens of them, same yellowed paper, same crooked typewritten lines, all unsigned, all familiar. Haley's fingers trembled. Some matched exactly what her mother had received over the years. Others were new, to people she'd never heard of. One was addressed to a Rebecca Nolan, another to Melissa Dreyer. She stared at them, her chest tightening. They had all come from here. Why were copies here? Who kept them? Why save them? At the bottom of the box, beneath the letters, something else. A small metal tag, round, military style, stamped with J. Beckett. Her father's initials, his blood type, his old service number. It was rusted, slightly bent, but unmistakable. She clutched it in both hands and dropped to her knees. Tears came slow, silent. He had been here. A sound. Haley froze. A click. Camera shutter. Very close. She turned her head, slowly. Nothing. No footsteps. No breathing. Just forest. Stillness. The kind of silence that screams in your ear. She rose, heart thudding, back toward the door. Another click, this time behind her. She spun around. No one. Then saw it. A footprint in the dust near the threshold. Fresh, not hers. She ran. No screams, no gasping. Just motion. Every nerve screaming at her to move. The forest twisted as she moved through it. Trees blurred. Her legs tore through underbrush. Briars slashed her arms. Her breath became ragged. She didn't stop running until her knees gave out. Collapsed behind a dead log, clutching the tag to her chest, heart hammering. No one followed. But someone had been there. She knew it. She tried calling Randy. No signal. Tried sending a text. Failed. Then remembered the voice journal. She opened her phone. Hit record. Her voice shook as she spoke. Entry 47. It's Haley. Mom, if you hear this, I found the place. It's real. He was there. I have his tag. I have the letters. But I wasn't alone. Someone was watching. I think... She stopped. Listened. Wind. Nothing else. I think someone's collecting these families. Watching us. For years. I don't know why. But it's not over. It's not even close. I'm leaving now. If I don't... She paused again. Then whispered, I'm sorry. Click. She never made it back to the car. Her trail was cold. The phone, found a day later by hikers, was cracked, half buried in a creek bed. Waterlogged. Useless. But the audio survived. Randy listened to it 5 times, and on the 5th listen, just before Haley says, I think someone's collecting, another voice cuts in. So faint, it had to be amplified tenfold. A whisper. Her name. Haley. Haley came back. Somehow, no memory of the last 2 hours, mud on her boots, scratches on her palms, her father's dog tag clutched in one hand, a box of damp letters tied inside her jacket. She knocked on Randy's motel door just after midnight, white as a sheet. He opened it, half-dressed, heart sinking at the sight of her. She looked like someone who'd been sleepwalking through fire. She didn't speak for the first 5 minutes. Just sat at the foot of his bed, clutching a towel, rocking slightly, eyes fixed on the wall. Only when Randy sat across from her, voice soft but firm. Haley, tell me what happened. Did she finally whisper, I wasn't alone? She didn't remember how she got out. Not exactly. One moment she'd been hiding behind a tree. The next, standing at the side of the road, headlights washing over her, someone yelling her name, She hadn't told her mom. Not yet. But she gave Randy the cassette she'd found. The one from the box, labeled only with a small piece of masking tape. Playback 19. He borrowed a portable tape deck from the sheriff's office and hit play. At first, silence. Then low ambient noise. Mechanical humming, maybe from an old truck or generator. Then a voice. Male. Calm. Familiar. I told you, it says. We never let him go. Randy's head snapped up, because the voice, it was Joel's. Or at least, it was trying to be. The cadence was perfect. The rhythm, the tone. But something was off, like hearing a friend talk in his sleep. Or a stranger wearing his smile. Haley covered her mouth. That's not him. They let the tape run. And after a stretch of warbling distortion, a second voice, clearer, colder. He knew the rules. Followed by something impossible, a series of dates. March 19th, 2003. March 17th, 2005. March 21st, 2008. March 18th, 2013. All the known disappearances, all recited as if from memory. With a final one whispered at the end, March 19th, 2014. That was this week. The tape hissed, then cut. Randy sent the tape to a friend at the FBI, someone he trusted. Voice analysis came back within 48 hours. Here's the strange part, the analyst said. It's not imitation. It's not computer-generated. That is Joel Beckett's voice. Randy blinked. How? There's a shift in phonetic alignment, maybe neurological degradation, slurred consonants, slight lag between breath and speech, almost like a stroke victim learning to talk again. But Joel's been missing for 11 years. Exactly. The line went quiet. Then the agent added, if this was recorded recently, then Joel Beckett isn't dead. Randy didn't tell Lynn right away, not because he wanted to protect her, but because he wasn't ready for what this meant. If Joel was alive, somewhere, somehow, what kind of man had he become? And why was someone using his voice to taunt them? Meanwhile, Haley kept the tag under her pillow. She barely ate, didn't sleep. The sound of her father's voice, twisted, echoed through her mind like static through a pipe. She replayed the tape 10, 12 times. Always the same moment that broke her. We never let him go. She couldn't decide what was worse. The possibility that her father had been taken, or that he'd chosen to stay. Then came the knock. Middle of the night. Haley opened the door to her apartment. Empty hallway. No footsteps. Just a package sitting on the mat. Inside, a copy of the exact same tape. Same label, same voice, same phrases. But this one had something new. Near the end, over the final hiss, a distorted fragment. Braden's Pass. A location. Spoken casually, as if it were common knowledge. Haley's eyes widened. She scrambled to her laptop, Googled the name. Nothing recent. But in a 1992 Department of Forestry map, buried in an old PDF, she found it. Braden's Pass Road. Closed since 1995 after a rock slide. Located deep in the Cabinet Mountains, Montana. No residences, no utilities, no rescue access, just trees, rock, and time. She called Randy. He answered on the first ring. I found something. Haley, listen. No, listen to me. This tape, it wasn't lost. It was delivered. Someone put it at my door. They want us to follow it. To what? She hesitated, then said the words that changed everything. Braden's Pass. The next day, Randy drove 2 hours to meet her. They played both versions of the tape again, side by side, the one from the shelter, the one from the doorstep. Same voice, same phrasing, but one subtle difference. On the doorstep copy, just before the end, there's a soft sound, a door creak, then a low, mechanical tone, a beeping pattern. Randy froze. I know that sound. He walked to the tape deck, hit rewind, played the last 10 seconds again. Beep, beep, beep. Short pause, then one long tone. It's a code, he whispered. An entry lock. Haley stared at him. To what? That night, Lynn finally found out. She hadn't heard the tape. Randy played it for her, with hesitation. Sat across the kitchen table watching as her hands went still. Her husband's voice. Not quite his. Saying things he never would have said. Then, the name. Haley. At the very end, whispered, not addressed to her, about her. Lynn stood slowly. He's not just alive, she said. They're using him. Randy swallowed. For what? Lynn's voice was dry, hollow. To keep us looking. Later that night, when Randy went out to his truck to smoke, he saw something glinting in the moonlight. Tucked under the wiper. Another envelope. Same paper. One sentence. You've already opened the door. The file wasn't supposed to exist. Randy had worked enough government jobs to know when a document had been buried on purpose. But there it was. Thin, yellowed, water-damaged, misfiled under medical discharge, non-combat related. Someone had gone out of their way to hide it in plain sight. He had to sign 3 forms and use an expired bureau ID just to get past the archive desk. The file was marked Beckett, J. Marine Corps Intelligence. Service dates, 1981 to 1994. And then the page that stopped Randy cold. Operation Gray Harvest, South Texas, March 1992. Status, denied existence. Personnel, redacted. Outcome, inconclusive. Survivors, 1. Name, Beckett, Joel. Corporal 2, killed under undisclosed conditions. 1 missing, Joel, the 4th. Back at the motel, Randy poured a whiskey he didn't want and stared at the manila folder as if it might change on its own. Joel had always been described as quiet, simple, just a guy who drove trucks and paid bills. But this file painted a different picture. Psychological conditioning, long-range assignments, specialized surveillance training. It wasn't just that Joel had served. It was what he'd been trained to do. And then disappeared from record. 10 years of civilian life. A house, a daughter, a wife. Then gone. Like someone hit pause. And finally, in 2003, play again. He brought the file to Lynn. She sat at the kitchen table, eyes locked on the cover, not touching it. You're sure this is real? She asked. Yes. Then I never knew him. Her voice didn't crack. That almost made it worse. I was with him 20 years. I knew his coffee habits, the way he folded socks. I knew every scar on his body. She looked up at Randy, her eyes hollow. But I didn't know this. He said nothing. I asked once, she whispered, about a burn mark near his ribs. He said it was from a motorcycle muffler. Guess what the file says? Electrical cauterization. Field procedure. She rose slowly. I don't know what's worse, that he lied. Or that maybe he had to. That night, Haley asked Randy what it all meant. He didn't have a clean answer, but he tried. If someone vanished Joel in 2003, it might have had nothing to do with his trucking job. Maybe it wasn't about the hitchhiker. Maybe it wasn't even about the letters. Then what? Maybe it was about cleaning up something from before? Haley frowned. Then why the games? Why the tapes? The letters? The ghost chasing? Randy exhaled. I think someone didn't want him gone. Someone wanted him remembered. Found. Just not by us. The next morning, a local sheriff's deputy stopped by the motel. A man had come into the station the night before. Didn't give a name. left a plastic bag with a cassette in it. Said only, "This is for the woman. She'll know." Then walked out. No security footage, no plates. Inside the bag, a cassette labeled JB Exit. Randy played it in the back office with Haley and Lynn listening. Joel's voice. Calm. Slower. Older. But undeniably him. "I did what they told me. I didn't think they'd come back." A pause. Some movement. Breathing. "I thought I could build a wall around it. Around me. But time doesn't stay still. It loops. It watches. There's a click. The sound of something. Maybe a door latch. If you're hearing this, then I've run out of places to hide." Then static. The message shook Haley more than she expected. Not because of what was said, but because of what wasn't. No mention of Lynn. No mention of her. Just a man unraveling slowly. A man who knew something was coming. Again. Later that day, Haley and Lynn sat on the porch of their rental cabin. The air was too still. Haley stared at the trees. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Something I never said before." Lynn turned, cautious. "In 2002, Haley said slowly, "I saw a man standing across the street one night. I thought it was our neighbor. But he never moved. Just stood under the lamppost, watching the house." "And you didn't tell us?" "I was 16. I didn't think it meant anything. Until now." She pulled out her phone, showed Lynn the photo she'd snapped weeks earlier, the barista with the wrist tattoo. That symbol. It was on his forearm. Lynn's face drained of color. "I saw it too. Once, years ago. On the forearm of a man talking to Joel at a gas station. He said it was a unit mark, some recon thing." They sat in silence. 2 sightings, years apart. Same tattoo, same watchers. That night, Randy took a drive. Needed air. Distance. He stopped at a turnout with a view of the mountains. No reception. No noise. He stepped out of the truck. Lit a cigarette. Then his police radio, left on the dash, crackled. A voice. Low. Mechanical. "You're close." Randy froze. Another crackle. Then clearer. "Too close." Then nothing. No ID. No signal source. Just wind in the trees. And somewhere, the feeling that this time, they were the ones being watched. The road to Braden's Pass had long since stopped being a road. It was more a suggestion now. Broken gravel, landslide scars, old timber groaning under years of snow and silence. But Randy knew what he was looking for. And Haley. Haley had waited long enough. They left the car at mile marker 12 and hiked the last 3 miles on foot, armed with a printed topo map, a pry bar, and more fear than either of them would admit aloud. What they found at the end of the trail wasn't on any map. Just a stretch of rock wall, moss-covered, indistinct. But behind it, a narrow opening. Cinder block edges half hidden by pine needles and thyme. Someone had cemented the original entrance, but someone else had broken through. The air changed the moment they stepped inside. Cooler. Dead still. No birdsong. No wind. The corridor narrowed to a steel-reinforced hallway, its walls lined with flaking insulation. A burned-out light fixture swung slightly from the ceiling, casting jittery shadows. It wasn't military, not exactly, but it was purpose-built. And someone had been here recently. Fresh scuff marks on the floor. An open can of beans on a crate. Still warm ashes in the small steel stove. Footprints. Randy held out a hand to stop Haley. "Wait. What?" He pointed at the wall ahead. Torn pages from newspapers. Taped, glued, smeared. All featuring stories of missing truckers. Some they knew, some they didn't. One front page stood out. Missouri man still missing after 10 years. Joel Beckett's photo staring out, 20 years younger. Pinned beneath it, a child's drawing of a semi-truck with a stick-figure family waving goodbye. Written above it, in block letters, "They got the wrong man." They kept moving. More pages, more scribbles. A phrase repeated again and again on different walls. Time is a loop. Time is a loop. Wrong plan, right place. Then they reached the back room. A bunk, canned food, a rusted safe bolted into the floor, and on the bed, a video camera. Haley's breath caught. Randy lifted it slowly, his gloved hands shaking. Still functional, cassette still inside. He hit play. The footage flickered to life. And there he was, Joel Beckett, bearded, gaunt, older, his eyes sunken but focused. He sat on the bed, back against the concrete wall, the camera angled upward. His voice came out rough, unused. "If you're watching this, I didn't want you to, but I knew you would." A pause. "I wasn't taken, not at first. I left." Haley flinched. "I left because I knew what was coming. They weren't ghosts. They weren't them. They were us. Or what we used to be." He shifted, coughed. "They said I could protect my family, that staying quiet meant keeping them alive. I believed that." His eyes flicked to the camera lens, the same eyes Haley had seen every birthday, every Saturday breakfast, until he was gone. "But I couldn't carry it forever." He held up the dog tag. "This wasn't supposed to be mine. It belonged to Marcus. He didn't make it. I took his name on the final op. That's the only reason I walked away." Haley gasped. Joel wasn't even Joel? No, he was. But his file wasn't. His identity, in the eyes of whoever wrote the rules, had been built from someone else's remains. Joel leaned forward on the tape. "I stayed here because I couldn't be trusted outside. Because what I knew, what I saw, couldn't leave these walls." He looked toward the door. Something off-camera moved. "If someone found this, tell Lynn I never stopped loving her. Tell Haley, she's not who they think she is. She's not part of the equation. She was the reason." Then, noise. Off-screen. A metal creak. Joel turned, eyes wide. "Number not yet. I have more." The footage cut. Static. Haley stared at the black screen for a full minute, then whispered, "He was protecting us from himself." Randy didn't reply. He was staring at the wall near the safe. Someone had written coordinates there, in charcoal. 47.51, north/115.42 West K, level clear access denied. He snapped a photo, eyes narrowing, then reached for his phone. No signal. They left the bunker at sunset. The forest looked different now, deeper, hungrier. They didn't speak as they walked. At mile 2, Randy's foot caught something, a tripwire. But nothing triggered. He glanced at Haley. "Let's move." Back at the car, Randy said he'd take the first drive shift. But when Haley woke up hours later, the car had stopped. Empty. Randy was gone. She called out. No answer. Then found his phone by a tree. Smashed. Still warm. His jacket lay beside it. Blood on the sleeve. Boot prints led into the woods. And vanished. In her lap, Joel's tape was still playing in her mind. She wasn't part of the equation. She was the reason. And somewhere out there, her father's voice was still echoing, and someone else was still listening. Spring came slowly to Birch Creek in 2015. After everything, the bunker, the video, Randy's disappearance, it felt almost cruel that the world kept spinning, that the birds still sang, that the grass still came up through cracks in the sidewalk like nothing had happened. The case went quiet again, just like it always did. Randy Tibbetts was never found. His rental car sat parked at the edge of County Road 86 for 6 days before anyone touched it. No fingerprints, no signs of a struggle. The GPS log ended with a corrupted timestamp, officially missing. Privately, presumed dead. No one called Haley after that. No one knocked on her door. Even the news stopped asking questions. And yet, she felt it wasn't over. Lynn tried to rebuild. She took a part-time job at the town library, started gardening again. People called her strong. They didn't see her check the mailbox every morning at 6 a.m. or freeze every time the doorbell rang. They didn't hear her whisper Joel's name at night, as if memory alone could summon him. She never said it aloud, but Haley could see it. Her mother was waiting for another letter. Then, on March 19th, exactly 12 years to the day, the doorbell rang at 4:17 a.m. Haley got there first. No one outside, but on the doormat, a small brown parcel. No return address. She brought it inside slowly, laid it on the kitchen table like a loaded weapon. It wasn't heavy. Inside, a flash drive. That was new. No one had ever used digital before. They waited an hour, then plugged it into Haley's laptop. One file. JoelFinal.mp4. She hovered over it with the cursor for a long moment, then double-clicked. The screen went black. Then, Joel, 15 years older. Gray in the beard. Weathered, but alive. He sat in front of a wooden wall, looked directly into the camera. His voice, older, slower, still steady. "If you're seeing this, I'm gone." He smiled faintly. "Don't be sad. I was already gone a long time ago." Haley leaned in, every nerve in her body bracing. Joel continued, "I left so you could live. All of this, it wasn't for me. It was so they wouldn't come for you." His hands were folded in front of him, a deep scar visible across one knuckle. "There are things you don't want to know. Things I didn't want to carry anymore. I made choices, before you were born, that never stopped echoing." He paused, looked away, then back at the lens. "You think this was about a disappearance. It wasn't. It was about containment. About keeping what I saw, what I was told to do, from touching anyone else." He inhaled, eyes blinking back tears. "Lynn, I failed you. You deserved peace, but I traded that for safety. I thought I could keep the walls up forever." A slight shift in his tone now, something softer, warmer. "Haley, you were never supposed to be part of this, but you were the best part of me, the only part I got right." He smiled, small, real. Then, in a whisper, "Marcus, I hope you forgive me." Haley froze. "Who's Marcus?" she asked aloud. Lynn stood rigid behind her, jaw clenched. They didn't know the name. Joel's final words came seconds later. "If they let this reach you, it means I'm gone, or it means I chose to go. Either way, live. That's the only thing I never got to do." He looked toward something off-screen. Then the video cut to black. Haley sat in silence. Everything they'd chased, every map, every voice, every letter, had led to this moment. But it didn't feel like closure. It felt like a door barely cracked open. Lynn took the flash drive in her hands. Then, without a word, walked to the fireplace and tossed it in. It snapped once as the plastic melted. Then, silence. Haley stared. "Why?" she asked. Lynn didn't look back. "Because we're finally free." But Haley wasn't sure that was true. 3 months passed. The air warmed. The lilacs bloomed. For a while, life began to resemble something close to normal. Then, in July, Haley found a letter in her mailbox. No stamp, just her name. Inside, a single line. "This time, don't look for me." No signature, no explanation, just the final move in a long, unseen game. Somewhere out there, a man named Joel Beckett had vanished more than once, and in his place, 100 shadows still flickered across highway rest stops, CB channels, and long-forgotten bunkers. Maybe he was dead, maybe not. But one thing was certain. Some disappearances aren't endings. They're warnings,